Yo, hello everyone. So welcome to the first official stream of the Sekika LiveCoding Twitch channel. Today, I thought we'd dig into Elm once again. So last time we did a couple test sessions. By the way, sorry because I'm a little bit ill. Got a bit of a cold. But so we're gonna rehash everything we did last time, which is basically the first exercise in Jan Sabbe's Petindr Elm kata. So we'll be doing Elm, yay! So what we'll be making is basically a Tinder app for pets. We'll be using Elm to build this, and I'll try and show you what we're making. That's basically it. Cool. So what do we need installed? Node.js and Elm. You can install Elm using the package manager. I think I installed it from previous version. Yeah, indeed. So what else? What else do we gotta do? Apparently, let's check. So go to the backend folder, do npm install, which I've done already, and then npm start, which is gonna start a backend that will provide a chat function with pets, and I think also like some REST servers or REST API where you can query and get a list of pets. But we won't be needing that for the first exercise, so let's just go with Elm Reactor and let's try out what this stuff does. So it'll start a web server on localhost, which I can show, of course. There we go. So since I started it from the root folder, it's Elm is going to try and serve all of the stuff. But Jan mentioned to first browse to the front end folder and then run Elm Reactor. So let's do that instead. There we go, and then refresh this. Now we've got just an index.html, and we've got a non-working web page. Why is that? Because apparently it cannot find a variable called initial model. So there's something wrong with our code in home.elm. So let me just first explain what the general idea is of the first exercise. So it says we want to have a working toggle info pane, right? So that's this button right here, the little eye. If you click on it, so first you'll be in this screen. Then if you click on the eye, a profile text should show up with still the name of the pet and then the distance right there. But this thing just functions as an overlay, right? Now when you click on it again, you'll go back to the regular screen with the pet and the name, etc. So that's the idea of the first exercise. Jan has got some cool hints out on how to do this. He does use Elm support. Check HTML to Elm is a plugin for HTML to Elm, which basically converts HTML into Elm. Kind of makes sense. And then there's also a link to the mockup itself. So this stuff doesn't do anything at all, right? So we're gonna try and make it more dynamic using the Elm framework. So let's check things in our code. What do we have already? So we've got this home.elm file. It says we need to define our messages, set up our model, which is this thing, and then initiate it apparently, define an update and define a view function. So let's do that gradually, but based on what our compiler is saying. So I'm working in, oh wait, maybe let's increase the size a little bit. then it should help a bit as well for our mobile viewers. Let's see. So when you hover over all of these squiggly lines, it'll say, well, I cannot find the variable initial model. And I think, yeah, exactly. So the page is saying the exact same thing. So this is great. So let's first decide on what this initial model needs to be. Apparently, our beginner program is something that also takes a model, but then the view is a function that takes a model and outputs an HTML message. Update takes a message and a model and outputs a new model. So this should be one of this kind of type, right? So how do you make sure or try to create a new one? So we'll use the equals operator and then say show profile text is whatever. Now Jan also has mentioned in his question that for initial pet data you can copy paste something from pets.elm. So let's try and do that. I'll look at that file. So here we can see that there is another pet type consisting of an ID, name, distance, text, photo URL. And then here are some pets being defined. So let's try baby chicken. Let's get baby chicken in there. This happens to be the exact same definition of a pet. So we could call this or make this into false and then add a new pet, which looks like this. Well, which looks like this really. Then let's format this. So now we have an initial model assigned, or it's a sort of variable, right? And at least now this isn't complaining anymore. So let's create a view function. Maybe like right here, view equals. Wait, did it come and suggest? No, it's just something. There we go. So view is a function that takes a model and outputs an HTML with a message. Now, the view is basically our HTML, right? And Jan also did say that we could just use the HTML to Elm formatter to convert this HTML into Elm. So let's do that. Open up the show text.html. And then basically the only thing we'll need, I think, is these. So not the header or anything, right? Does he mention? Yeah, everything in the body. So starting here. And then I know from before that the HTML to Elm thing sort of botches this up because it takes into account the actual enters or new lines in this text. So first we'll just join all of this. My bad. Join lines. There we go. And then let's do HTML convert to Elm. And then paste it right in here. There we go. Now it says that it's not outputting a message yet. Let's just call this A, which is like whatever type. I don't care about this type. Then the next thing we'll need is an update function. Let's see if, yeah, there we go. So an update function is something that takes a message also takes in a model and then outputs a model or a tuple containing a model and a message. Now, we don't have a message type just yet, so let's change all this and also maybe just output a model for brevity, and then really just return model. Right, and this was basically anything. Bam, so it seems to be compiling. Since it's compiling, let's see if this works as well. There we go. So we've already got our first static page on screen after having compiling Elm code. Now it is already showing the profile text, because I think in the show text it really just the profile is contained already in the div, right? So now we are outputting it directly. That's all of this text right here. Now, obviously, since I showed you that none of these buttons are actually working, let's make it a little bit more dynamic, I'd say. So we've done this already. We've also copy pasted baby chicken's info, which, as you can see, is not being shown right here because we're showing princess or princess's info. Now, let's see what the green squiggly lines mean. So apparently our top level initial model does not have a type annotation. Now, this is cool about the Elm compiler, is that it can recognize what kind of type annotation that the initial model variable should have, and it's this thing. So it's nice and tries to suggest, hey, maybe you should use this type declaration so that you don't make any mistakes anymore. So we're gonna ignore Elm, even though it's being very helpful. But so let's see what else we can do. Now, this main thing, all right. Yeah, we'll get to this as well. So, not sure if my format. Yeah, okay. So right now we've got this Elm's beginner program, which takes in a model, which gets filled in with our initial model, the description all the way above. Then we are also gonna say which view function it needs to use to render stuff, and then also which update function the beginner program needs to take to do updates to your model based on stuff that happens in your view. So if we want to make sure that this button does something, we'll probably need to register some kind of a click handler, right? So let's see where this button actually is. All right, here. Cool. By the way, so maybe like a little hack or mind hack for you guys, if you can't really read this Elm HTML, is just imagine button being one of these, and the first array that you pass along are attributes, and the second array you pass along are the child elements of this button element. So we need to add a click handler. Now here the class attribute is being used, so we'll add a click handler on click. What should on click do? Well, I want to send out an event that says the info button was clicked or whatever, or maybe profile button, because we are in the end talking about profiles, right? Profile button was clicked. Now Elma's gonna say, hey, what the hell, I can't find a variable that's called profile button was clicked. So let's just try and define that somewhere over here. There we go. Now, this breaks. Why does this break? Well, because apparently our view function does not match its type annotation. Let's see why. Well, we said our view function takes in a model and outputs an HTML that also takes in any type. Now, we don't have just any type anymore. We have one specific type, which is a message. This type that we defined right here. So let's try and fix that. Cool. So once again, compiler being super helpful. And everything seems to be compiling once again. That's great. Let's format it again. So by the way, thanks for asking this question. So why Elm? Is it just curiosity towards Elm, or do you really like Elm for some reason? If so, why? I think it's a bit of both. I am trying to learn more functional way of thinking, and Elm happens to be a functional language, so that's why that's the answer to the curiosity part. But I really like Elm as well because it's generally just super helpful in trying to discover errors. It comes with a debugger built in. I absolutely love the way you have to deal with state and how clear and non-error prone it is. So basically, that's why Elm. So thanks for that question. NAMP. Where were we? I think I was just trying to explain the message that we just created. This type now consists of just one thing. Basically, the profile button was clicked. Now we need something to handle these or this event, so the message. So you already saw like a little bit of a sneak peek before. There was this case of stuff. So this is pattern matching in Elm, where you can say, well, when my message is basically this thing, then do whatever. So now, for now, let's just return our model. Now, Elm, this is another reason why I really like Elm, is that the compiler really tries to help you a lot. Instead of just barfing out errors and line numbers and exceptions and stuff like that, that you have to Google or maybe even worse, go to Stack Overflow for and try to figure out what the hell is actually going on. So now in here, you can see that Elm is trying to be helpful again. It's saying, hey, this profile button was clicked thing is causing problems in the pattern matching logic that you've written. Why is that? Well, the pattern matches things of type message with capital M, but the values it will actually be trying to match are just this. So basically, if I can make this a little bit more concrete. So A is like the any type, right? Now it's being even more clear. So then it's even trying to say, maybe your type annotation uses type variable A, which means any type of value can flow through. But once again, my code is saying that it cannot be anything. It's something more specific. Namely, it wants to be a message. So if I go like this, compilation goes away. And if we refresh this stuff, then everything still seems to work. Great. Now, maybe you've noticed, but as I've been clicking, this little counter here has been incrementing them every time I click. So let's try and open this and show you guys what this thing is. So every time I clicked, I get this event. I get the event, the message type saying profile button was clicked. Cool. So just keep this in mind for when I'm about to blow your minds later. Let's see, have we done? Yeah, right. We still need to actually make it do something. So we're gonna have to try and do something when this profile button was clicked. We're gonna have to try and do something to our model. So as you can see, initial model is something that has a Boolean value that contains show profile text. So maybe we should try updating this Boolean. So the way we do that is by, what you typically want to say, so model's show profile text variable should now be true, right? Something like this. Now, if we want to write this, we would actually be changing state. Now, all record types, so these things are called records. So the definition, the structure definition. So they're all immutable. So what it's actually saying, well, the equals operator is only reserved for defining variables, like we did here, right? Or in our initial model here. So how do we go about changing state on this model? What you want to be doing is you want to basically say, well, I want to return something that looks like a model, but really the thing I only want to change is the show profile text, which is now true. So basically this is saying, hey, I want this model that came in, that I got as a parameter, and I want to basically copy this thing, except I don't want to copy it entirely. I want to set the show profile text to true for this model. So let's see what happens when we refresh, because our code is still compiling. Explore history. It's at 0. I wish it wouldn't pop up on the other screen every time. So I've clicked it once, and our show profile text, it was set to true. Now we don't know it. We need to resume and then click it some more, and then show you that there is absolutely no difference. Now, what is another way that we can actually verify that our update function actually works? Is, of course, write the tests. But so let's keep that for one of the future sessions, maybe. What is another way that we could do is we've set it to false first. So actually, when we refresh this thing here, we get to verify that our show profile text is indeed false. And you guys can see this as well. It says false. So when I click on this I button now, it should update my show profile text variable to true. See if that works, and it does. Cool. So now we've also verified that clicking on this button works, right? It's changing the variable to true. Now if I click it many more times, it will remain true. So that's probably not what we want, because we want to be toggling every time we click on it, right? But let's keep that for like for a little while. Let's first try and actually make this some more stuff dynamic, maybe. So we've got a working update function. We've got an initial model. We've also copy pasted the HTML so that it now looks like Elm. But as you noticed, it's still outputting the profile text of Princess, as well as the background, the name, and the kilometers. By the way, for the kilometers, let's make this into, I don't know, 42, because everyone's a geek. Then let's make sure that the pet's name of the initial model is actually being shown. Now, I know for a fact that somewhere in here there's princess, the name, here we go, identification name. So how would we go about showing the model's current pet name? I guess like this, just use dot notation. It still seems to be compiling. And when we refresh, we can indeed see that baby chicken is now being displayed. Great. We can do the same for for distance, and then same for profile text. It's got to be something else then, right? Or maybe just text. So once again, yeah, okay. So we didn't actually save before, so the compiler didn't trigger. But in fact, we already have a little bit of a mistake in here, because distance in our type, or in our model's current pet, is not a string, it's an int. Now our text function is expecting only strings. So what we could do is call the toString function, and then first toString this int value, and then pass it along to text. Now, if I'm gonna save it like this, text is gonna complain, oh shit, compiler is gonna complain, well, hey, I am trying to call text, but it's expecting a string argument, but instead of a string argument, you're passing along a function that takes anything and makes it into a string. So that's wrong, right? So we know that it's wrong. So we also know that this toString function, calling it on an int, is going to return a string. And since text is just return or expecting a string, let's try and put it in between braces. And it does seem to be compiling. Now, another thing you could do instead of typing braces is using this pipe. And really, the only thing it is that you're basically piping the output out of this function call into this function. It's really that easy. So basically, every time you've got braces around anything, you can replace or get rid of the braces and then put a pipe symbol in front of it. Easy. Cool. So we've made the distance dynamic, so this should update now as well. And also the profile text. Now what else? Here. So we've also got this source thing here. I'm not sure if yeah, so photo URL does also take into account a complete URL, which is good. We don't want just photo URL, we want the photo URL of the model's current pet. That's still compiling, and it's working. Now you can't really see any of it really. So let's maybe just not render this div entirely. Let's see, what do we need to get rid of then? Yeah, so we don't want our div as part of this div's children, right? So let's go like that, get rid of it. There we go, here's baby chicken. Button's still not doing anything though. So I replaced this, but I also now know that this is the thing I want to make dynamic, right? So what we could do is get rid of this, and then instead just add profile text. What is profile text? Maybe just call it profile text div, maybe even. So this is going to be the div that's going to contain the profile text when it's there. If it's not there, let's just render an empty div or something. So it can't find a variable, so let's try and define it. Profile text div equals this thing, right? Now, of course, model is something that's only known when you enter the view functions, because this gets passed along the model argument. So what we need to do is we need to make this into a local variable, basically, to this view function. Luckily, Elm provides this kind of feature by using the let in syntax. So basically it's saying, hey, in between the let and in the in, just start defining whatever variable that you want, and then use it inside this div, or like after the in. So re-render, or sorry, reformat this stuff. Now you can see that it's compiling, so when it's compiling it should work, and there we go. Now let's try changing this into an empty div to make sure that it's also able to render this stuff. Ah yeah, so that's my bad, because a div always needs two arrays, one for the attributes and one for the children. And there you go. So that also works. Let's revert a little bit of that stuff. So now we basically only want to render this stuff when so these guys ordered a pizza. They're sending the smell my way. Well, too bad for you guys, because my nose is completely blocked, so I can't actually smell anything. What's next, right? So we want to conditionally render this div. Let's see how we can do this. So typically in programming land, you would write an if and an else. So in Elm, if syntax uses this thing. When models show profile text is true, basically, right? Then output this, else output an empty div. Format is fine. Cool. There we go. Let's check it out. Bam. So this is great. Now it's actually rendering the profile text once I click the button. So once again, clicking the button was sending the on click, or passing or saying, hey, by the way, when on click happens, just send out a profile button was clicked event. Then our update function gets this in, and we can react to these kinds of events. In this case, profile button was clicked, and what do we want to do? Well, we just want to set the profile text to true, which then gets passed along into our view once again, where we are gonna conditionally render our profile text div. And when the models show profile text thing is true, then just render the profile text div. Otherwise, render an empty div. Now, just setting it to true would be dumb, right? Because we really want to toggle. So when it's true, then we want to set it to false. When it's false, then we want to set it to true. So let's just do that instead. So if our model show profile text is true, then make this, else like this, right? So I'm pretty sure we can do this in a nicer way as well, but let's not worry about that just yet. This is simple enough. I think it's also understandable enough. So just toggle it, basically, right? Let's see if that stuff works. Click on that, and it does. Yay! Cool. So I think that actually completes the first exercise. since we now have a working toggle info pane. Oh wait, the other thing I still wanted to show you guys is this history thing again. Now when initially our show profile text is false, I click on the show profile text button, it returns into true, and this is this first event that got sent. Then I click on the I button again. Now we can see that, so first it was false, then it was set to true, then it was set to false once again. I think this is also showing current state and not initial state. Yeah, there you go. So really what you can do now is follow this stuff along. And the other thing you can do is actually export all of this. And then basically, so what end users could do, or testers or whatever, they can basically try out your app and test it with this debugger on. Whenever a bug happens, they can just click on this export thing. And the only thing we as developers need to do is just import this file and then step through all of the events that are happening and then notice where shit goes haywire, which is really nice. And it's basically just another cool feature of Elm that's really embedded in the framework itself. Excellent. Okay, I'm gonna take a little break, maybe create like a branch or something for this thing. Let's do that. Yeah, we only changed home. Live coding the first or whatever. Then make a commit. Show info pane done. Bam. Okie dokie. Cool. So I'll be right back with you guys. Yo, here we are again. So what we just did was we created a toggle info pane, and the button actually works. Hooray! We did that by first creating our beginner program, which takes in an initial model, a view function, an update function. Our view function is nothing more than something that takes in a model, conditionally assigns a div to profile text div, renders the pet's photo URL, the conditionally rendered profile text div, the current pet's name, and then the current pet's distance, which we had to toString. Then we also registered a click handler on the info button, where we send out or broadcast a profile button was clicked message. Then that's this one. And in our update function, we'll take care of this profile button was clicked message, and when the profile text was set to true, then our model, we update it with false. When it's set to, so whenever else it's set to false, basically just set it to true. So this is toggle. I did add just this for clarity, I guess, but you don't need it. You can just evaluate it within the if itself. What else? So that was that. Now let's see what the second exercise is. So here we want to implement the like and the dislike button, and it should bring you to the next pet. So what you need to do is we'll need to add a list of next pets in our model. Once again, Jan says basically check pets.elm for data. Then every time you click like or dislike, the first in the list of next pets becomes the current pet. So basically, when you click when you click on like or you click on dislike, it shouldn't really do anything other than just progress the list and make next pet the current pet. Okay, so he also adds a link on how to pattern match on lists. Let's see what that is about. So let's first just check out the screen. So this is the dislike, the like button. So when you click on this, it should basically pop up the next pet that is in some kind of list. Cool. Yeah, we don't need this thing anymore, right? Get rid of it. I don't think we'll need this either, but we'll need the pets.elm once again because it contains a next pets list. Maybe something that I want to do first is actually add this alias and actually use it in our application that we have now. Because as I mentioned earlier, our pet is basically exactly the same as this thing, right? So let's see if I copy this stuff here. So this does contain an ID, a name, a distance, a text, and a photo URL, right? So we can basically change this by saying, hey, current pet, you're not just some record, you're actually a pet. And then get rid of this. No, it shouldn't be compiling. Why not? Well, because pet, what do you mean with pet? I cannot find that sort of type. But we could import pets and then exposing all the things. Now our pet or the code is compiling. Let's see if it's actually working as well. Oh wait, I think I shut down the. I did. I shut down the Elm reactor. There we go. So still working like a charm. Cool. So let's check what the squiggly lines are saying. All right, it's saying that initial model isn't. It could infer that initial model, this thing, is in fact a type that takes in a current pet, which has this record structure, and also has a show profile text, which is a boolean. So we could say, well, just copy paste this stuff, and then Elm will be happier, I guess. But we could also just say pet is a pet. And now I hope you guys can see what we really want here, is we want to say that initial model is in fact a model. Right. There we go. Done. Cool. So now that we've got this list of pets, another thing we could do is, and we're also exposing everything that pets is exporting, which is everything. We could just make a reference to baby chicken, the variable, like this, and our code should still work. Cool. So now basically this is a reference to this variable right here. That also means that we now have access to this next pets list, which is something that we're definitely going to use. I do think, however, that next pets in here is making the assumption that princess is your first pet. So let's make princess our first pet, and then these will be our next pets. Cool. Now, Jan gave the hint in his explanation that we want to keep a list of next pets in our model. We do have a next pets declaration in any case, which is a list of pets, but we don't have next pets in our record structure just yet. So what will happen if I add next pets right here and then say, hey, my next pets are basically next pets. Think about it for a second. It doesn't compile. Why not? Well, actually, initial model should be a model. And the model's definition does not take a list of pets. It just has a current pet and a profile text. But here, this initial model you're trying to create does have this next pets thing, which is a list of pets, and model doesn't have it. So let's just add it to our model because that's exactly what we wanted. And what is this? Well, it's a list of pets. Cool. Still compiling. Should still work. Yeah, right. So now we've got princess. Right. So the next part we need to do is make sure that when we click on this like, or sorry, dislike button or the like button, we want to progress the list basically. So we've got we've got two big buttons, and we want to add click handlers. We want to say, we want to say profile button was clicked. Well, it's not a profile button, it's a like button, and here it's the dislike button. I'm saving so I can compile. What's the matter? Can't find? Of course not. So let's try and also add this to this other into here. So really what I've done is I've added or I've updated the definition of what a message can be, right? So now my view is not only or it might not only broadcast profile button was clicked events, but also dislike button and like button was clicked events. Well, so why is this not compiling? Because it's just taking care of the profile button was clicked. It's not taken into account dislike or like button. But I don't need it just yet. So, and that's exactly what the compiler is coming to say. Hey, man, that's all fine and dandy that you've now added a union type of for message that also can be a dislike button or a like button, but you're not taking care of that in your case matching logic. So we are taking care of this profile button was clicked because we know what can happen, or well, rather we know what should happen. So I should be doing something like this and like this as well. And now it seems to be happy. So that's great, and it shouldn't have any influence on this thing whatsoever because I'm not doing anything with the model. Then what? Let's have a drink. So what do we want to do when we click the dislike button? We wanted to progress the list, and progressing the list meant keeping a list of next pets in our model. Check. Every time you click like or dislike, the first in the list of next pets becomes the current pet. The rest of the list becomes the new next pets list. So really, what we want to do is well, update our model in the first place. So let's just do it like this. So the first thing it said was, well, no, wait, it was current pet. Current pet, cool. And current pet should become the first of the list. Now let's look up how we can get this first of the list using pattern matching. So if you, well, this is about tuples, here's a list. So you can also go pattern matching. Now first is a function that takes in a list. They're gonna execute it with my list, which is gonna, oh man, I have to sneeze. Or I don't. Okay, that's also cool. That's cool. Cool. It's all great. So apparently when you pattern match on a list, you can destructure it into the head and then the cons, which is like the name functional languages, I guess, use for splitting up a list into a head and a tail, with the tail being another list. And then in the case that your list is not empty, basically, because it has some item, and then I don't care what else is there, but it needs to have one item in it, then just return this first item, the head, basically. When it's an empty list, return nothing. So nothing and just or both of that type, maybe. Now, I'm not sure if we need to take all of that stuff into account. I think we can just get away with returning and maybe like an empty pet or something, or maybe we want to revert back to princess. So that means whenever we have an empty list, and our dislike button was clicked, we've got just an empty list, then we'll revert back to princess as our current pet. I think we can do that. So let's call this thing next pet. Then let's create a let in expression where we're gonna assign next pet into a case where we try to pattern match on models next pets. Now when so this is how I usually write it, and this is the empty list. So when we have the empty list, or when a model.nextPets is an empty list, excuse me, then next pet should become princess. And whenever model.nextPets does have an item in it, then it should become just head. Alright, so now we've got some issues because we don't need to do this. Cool. Now the other thing that we're not doing just yet is updating the next pets list with the remainder. Let's do it in another thing. Remaining pets. So by the way, I'm not going for best functional code. A lot of this stuff can be written way fancier and way better, basically. But for the sake of, well, I'm basically just assuming that you guys that are watching the stream aren't really experts in functional paradigms or haven't seen Elm just yet, and we can just reuse more simple things because, yeah, let's keep that for another time. Maybe I'll do a session on making this code like better in general. So once again, we want to assign remaining pets also based on the next pets, right? We want to when something is when it's got an element, then we want to return D and not H. So in this case, let's say for example that we've got princess, baby chicken, and bluebell in our pets array. This thing will make it look like this. So this is the exact, so these are all equal. Now I really do have to sneeze, don't I? Do I? Again, no sneezing. This is the worst. Anyway, furthermore, you can write this as well as this, where this is the first element, this is the second element, and then this is the rest of the elements only containing one element, and all of this is a list. So this is all legal stuff. That also means, by the way, that you can destructure this model.nextPets into this sort of pattern, first pattern matching as well. And then you can use first and second however you want. But let's stick to head and tail. Get rid of this stuff. Oh yeah, so obviously if I've got an empty list, then remaining pets should also just remain empty. Now it's complaining that, hey man, I only have a list, or I expect a list of pets in as a return or as an output of this case matching logic. So this is a list, but what you're saying is that it can, the first thing as a list, and then the second thing is basically a pet. So fix that. Let's fix that. So let's refresh. It's still compiling. Stuff works. Oh, all right. I only added a click listener to the dislike. So dislike is already. It's not doing everything that I expected though. So what is dislike doing right now? When I click it the first time, sorry, let's go like here, click on dislike, and you can see that baby chicken now gets rendered because baby chicken is now the current pet. And then what I don't know is if the next if the current pets list has been updated. Wait, not current pet, next pets. It still contains baby chicken. Yeah, that is in fact something that is correct because we are only updating the current pet, and we are not updating next pets just yet. So as you can see, my code was still compiling, but there was a bug in there, right? So just compiling is not enough. There we go. Now we can cycle. Then I don't know, is Bobby the last one? Yeah, it is. So if I click this one, next pet should evaluate to an empty list, which should cycle back to princess. Yay. And then clicking this will remain on princess because then the list will remain empty. Okie dokie. Cool. Great. Commit worthy? What do you guys think? I think it is. Let's commit with saying dislike button advances to next pet. Bam. Let's restart our Elm reactor again. Okay. So now we kind of want to do the same with our like button, right? So we could copy paste this and it would work, but it wouldn't be great, right? So why don't we just call this thing advance pet, and then make advance pet equal this. Now you can see that it takes in a model with next pets. So let's also pass along the model. That means that we need to pass along the model here as well. There we go. It should still work. Yeah, seems to work. Great. And then that means we can reuse this function and also implement the like button that way. So here, advanced pets is, well, it's saying that it doesn't have a type annotation. So let's try it if we can actually declare it ourselves. What is it? Well, it's a function that takes in a model and it's going to output another model. And there we go. Easy as pie. We recompiled, we restarted, and then this button should now also advance to the next pet. And it does. Yay! Great. Does the profile text still? Oh yeah, it does. Excellent. Grumpy cat. Why are you so grumpy? Cool. Another commit-worthy thing, I think. Go add all of the things, or I could just go like this, I guess. What did we do? We also made sure that the like button also advances pets. There we go. I did that right. Okay. Cool. So what's next? Did we actually do all of the things? Every time you click like or dislike, the first in the list of next pets should become the current pet. Yeah, done, eh? Alright. Now, before we head into this thing, because this is gonna drag in a lot of more stuff, let's actually try to make our code a little bit better. Now, maybe let's first try and get rid of all of this crap, because this really looks like we're doing exactly the same thing. So what we could do is we could, and I think this works. I'm not really sure actually. I think what we could do is have this case function not just return just one thing, but like have it return a tuple. So that also means, wait, I'm gonna write it next to it. Remaining pets. And what is this thing? Well, it's this thing. And whenever my model next pet, well, the first thing in my tuple should be head, and then the next thing in my model should be tail, or in this tuple should be tail. When it's empty, my first thing, my next pet should be princess, and otherwise it should be an empty array. And I think this should work. I'm not quite sure. It does. Cool. So now we've done double assignment in one go. I'm not sure if I can actually, maybe we can get rid of. Oh yeah, we can't. Yeah, you still need to say, well, it's a tuple. Does it still work though? Cool. Seems to be working. So we've refactored this. To use the structuring assignment. There we go. What else can we improve? Right, so we can improve this as well, right? And I'm pretty sure that there should be some kind of toggle button as well that basically just say make this show profile text into a and I want to go like this. Not. And then maybe it's like Boolean inverse or something. So let's quickly check Elm lang. Maybe it's in here. No, this is about destructuring. Let's check Elm lang. The docs. Maybe here, yeah, booleans or something. Oh wait, no, I want here, I want core, that's it. Bool, basics. Comparison booleans not, of course. So not. Excellent. So in this case, I can just get rid of that stuff. I really need to set up a shortcut for that. And then format is gonna fuck it over for me. Yes, it is. Oh wait. Oh well. I think there was some other part where I did that, right? No, not really. Okay. Yeah, I think that's great already. So what we done here is we refactored profile button to use toggle, Boolean toggle. There we go. We actually haven't checked if it works. It sure does. Excellent. Okay, cool. Let's give me a couple of minutes and then I can prepare for maybe the next part, or we're just gonna close the stream, we'll see. Alright, see you soon. And I can maybe just blow my nose as well. Okie dokie. Guys, I'm gonna stop the stream right here. Yeah. See you next time, and thanks for watching. Bye. Stop streaming.